Welcome to my CSEC series on measurements. Today we will be discussing the perimeter. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to understand the concept of perimeter and calculate the perimeter of various shapes and estimate the perimeter of irregular shapes. First, let's define what a perimeter is. The perimeter is the total length of all sides of a shape. It is like you're walking around the edge of a park and measuring the distance to complete a full loop. Understanding perimeter is important in real life. For example, if you're putting up a fence around your garden, you will need to know the perimeter so you can buy the right amount of material for fencing. Now, shapes can either be regular or irregular, and you will require different methods to either estimate or determine the perimeter. Let's start with regular polygons. For regular polygons, calculating the perimeter is straightforward. Since all sides are equal, you simply need to multiply the total length of one side by the number of sides, and you'll be able to get the perimeter. You can use this for shapes such as squares, equilateral triangle, or regular pentagon. For example, calculate the perimeter of a square with sides 5 cm. So for this example, we simply need to know that the perimeter would be equal to 4 times length of one side is 5 cm, so that will be 20 centimeters. Here's another example. Find the perimeter of an equilateral triangle with sides of 6 meters. So a triangle has 3 sides. So the perimeter would be equal to 3 times 6 meters. That's 18 meters. Now, before I move on, just remember, this here is an equilateral triangle. It means that all sides are 6 meters and all angles are 60 degrees. You cannot do this for other triangles. Other triangles might have different lengths on this side and this side when compared to this side. So you must know the length of all the sides if you're required to find the perimeter. A rectangle has opposite sides equal. To find its perimeter, you would add the length and the width and then multiply by 2, since we have 1, 2 widths and 1, 2 lengths of equal value. So let's consider this example. A rectangle has a length of 8 centimeters and a width of 3 centimeters. Calculate its perimeter. Let's draw a shape for the rectangle. And as it said, our rectangle has a length of 8 centimeters and a width of 3 centimeters. That means that this side opposite is 3 centimeters and this side opposite is 8 centimeters. So we have 2 8 centimeter values and 2 3 centimeter values. So we simply say that the perimeter would be equal to twice the sum of 8 and 3 centimeters, which is 2 into 11 centimeters, which is 22 centimeters. For irregular shapes, we calculate the perimeter a little differently. We can't multiply by a certain amount to get the perimeter. Since irregular shapes have sides that are not always equal, we need to add up the length of each side individually. So we will add the lengths of each of the sides here to get the perimeter of this shape. Here's an example. Calculate the perimeter of a shape with sides measuring 3, 4, 5, and 6. So to determine the perimeter, we simply need to add this here, here, and here. Alright, so let's determine the perimeter. The perimeter would be equal to the length of each side added together. So 3 meters plus 4 meters plus 5 meters plus 6 meters. 4 and 6 would be 10. 3 and 5 would be 8, 8 and 10 would be 18. So we get 18 meters as the perimeter for that irregular shape. For irregular shapes with curved edges, you cannot determine the perimeter as you did before. Instead, you can estimate the perimeter by tracing the outline with a piece of string. When you encounter a section that is curved, you break the curve up into smaller sections and approximate each section to a straight line. So in this example here, we'll break this up into 1, 2, 3 sections. So we will have this section here, and this section here. If we want a better answer, we can break this section into 2 pieces, this section into 2 pieces, and this section into 2 pieces. Or we can break it up into more. The more sections you break it up into, the closer you get to the actual value for the length of that curved section. And then, measuring the overall length of the string that completes the trace will give you the perimeter of the shape. Now, circles have a unique name for their perimeter. Their perimeter is called the circumference. The circumference is the distance around a circle. You can calculate it by either using the radius r or the diameter d. In the diagram, the green line represents the diameter. It is a line that starts at the circumference, passes through the center, and touches the circumference again. The radius is represented by the yellow line. It starts at the center of the circle and touches anywhere on the circumference of the circle. In both cases, pi is used in the formula. Pi is a constant. Most of the time, the exam paper will give you the value of pi. If not, you should use it as 3.142. Here's an example. Calculate the circumference of a circle with a radius of 7 centimeters. So, the circumference is equal to 2 pi r. So, we calculate c as being equal to 2 into 3.142 into r, which is 7 centimeters. Let's use our calculator. Alright, here's our calculator. Now pi can be a button like this, or a second function which you have to press this, and then the second function to get it. The value of pi on the calculator is as follows. You shouldn't use this value unless they do not state what value of pi you should use. Most instances, you will be required to use 3.142. 2 times 3.142 times 7, and we get an answer of 43.988, or we can say 44. Now, to show you will get the same answer with the other formula, we'll use the diameter to calculate the circumference as well. The diameter is simply twice the radius. Right away you can see where this and this means that our circumference is equal to pi times d. We simply need to replace these two with d. And we will get 3.142 times 14 centimeters, and we get 44 centimeters again. Finally, we'll talk about compound shapes. Compound shapes can be broken down into simpler pieces such as rectangles, triangles, circles, just to list a few. However, remember you only need to add the lengths of the boundaries of the compound shape. Once you add those boundaries together, you'll be able to get the perimeter of your compound shape. Let's try this example. We're required to find the perimeter of a shape combining a rectangle and a semicircle attached to one end. To calculate the perimeter, I need the length of this side, this side, this side, and this side here, because those are the edges that make up the boundary. This side is 10, so that means this side is also 10, since it's a rectangle. This side is 4, so that means this line here is also 4. This is the diameter of this circle here. We can use the circumference of a circle to figure out the length of this curved edge. We notice that we only have half of the circle, so we only need to figure out half of the circumference. Once we add half of the circumference to these two 10s and this 4, we'll be able to get our perimeter. Let's solve it now. Now, we need the perimeter of the curved edge. I'll just simply call that E. So we know pi d will give me the circumference. I need half of that to get that curved edge. So pi into 4 centimeters over 2, and we'll get the answer of 2 pi centimeters. Next, we want the perimeter of the compound shape, which will be the side that measures 4 centimeters, two sides that measure 10 centimeters, and one side that measures 6.3 centimeters. This gives me 10.3, 20, which is 30.3 centimeters. Now, that's the end of it for today. In this lesson, we defined the perimeter of a two-dimensional shape. Once we understood the definition of perimeter, we learned to calculate the perimeter of regular shapes. We then looked at irregular shapes, which can have either curved or straight edges, and to determine the perimeter, we need to measure the length of each straight edge and use a string to estimate the length of curved edges. Then, by adding the length of all edges, we can obtain the perimeter. Next, we learn how to determine the circumference of a circle by using either the diameter or the radius. And finally, we applied all previous concepts to determine the perimeter of compound shapes. Thank you for joining me in this lesson on perimeter. In the next lesson, we'll learn about how to estimate and calculate the area of plane shapes. Feel free to leave any questions or comments below, and don't forget you can join the Google Classroom for the series resources. See you in the next lesson. Bye.